Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast. Gather round, everyone. We've made it through the gimmick rounds. Congratulations. Now we get some actual football until the buys, and I'm so happy about that. Hello, everyone. It's Jesse and Liam.
You say the buys, we've got some of those coming up, but I interrupt you, Jesse. Keep going. Do the lovely intro. I stopped you.
Do the lovely intro. I'm so enthusiastic. We're recording on a Sunday, which means I've had enough sugar to kill a grizzly bear. Welcome back to our viewers on YouTube, to our listeners on your preferred podcasting platform. If you haven't already subscribed, left reviews, left likes, left comments, shared it with your family, friends, and pets, please do so. We appreciate all the love and support. Liam, right. I've already seen you today, and now I'm seeing you again. So for me, this is a double dose of you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. But, you know, it's important. We had important things to do this morning. We have important things to do tomorrow night when we normally record. So here we are on a Sunday evening. We thought, you know what, let's get it in. Games have just finished. You know, Collingwood and Hawthorn has just finished. So we thought, let's get onto it while it's fresh and we can talk about Jesse's favourite round and gather round, everybody. Gather round.
Well, that was my ulterior motive to do it tonight, because the sooner we can talk about gather round and it's done for another 12 months, the better. But we can't stop talking about gather round, Liam, because there's going to be 3 of them. There's going to be 3 of these bloody things.
Look how fired up he is. Listen,
it just makes me so cross.
Look, I must admit, I don't mind the idea of the gather round. I think it's nice. It's good. If they share one around to different places around the country, I can get on board with that. I mean, I think it's contracted to Adelaide for another couple of years, and then they'll figure out what to do with it from there. But when I saw the news that they're wanting to do, 3 gather rounds in a year, that's too much. I mean, as Freo fans, we got a home game round 3. We're not going to get another one till round 7. So we don't actually go and get to watch the footy until round 7. That's 4 weeks in a row. Now, you know, that's a long time between games, where it used to be one every week. And I saw one once every fortnight. Having a 4-week stretch is a tough ask. And if you're going to do 3 of these rounds a year, you know, sure, one of them might be in Perth, but then again, what about people in Queensland? Then they miss out. It's just, you know, one's enough, everybody. Let's pump the brakes on it just a smidge. And Jesse, I'm sure you're going to give us all your thoughts about it right now.
I've got a lot of things to say about this, but
in the interest
of time, I'm going to keep it fairly succinct. And I want to actually talk about, I don't want to talk about why there's 3. I don't want to talk about any of that. I actually want to talk about club members here and season ticket holders, because when Gather Round the first came in, and in this case, first is worst, it was a case of it's an extra game. It's not going to take away from the 11 home games that season ticket holders and club members have access to each season. I don't see a scenario realistically where that will be retained if there's now 3 of these things each year, which means let's not kid ourselves here. And this is not a crack at the clubs, but the membership prices aren't going to come down.
No, not at all.
That's not going to happen. So now you're potentially in a situation where you're either asking players to play more, which means more TV money, but more fatigue, and also issues now with salary cap and contracts. That's one part of it. But now you're also looking at fans. Let's not kid ourselves here. Each club would have a wide variety of fans, from fans who are comfortable financially to fans who perhaps, you know, back their clubs in with sacrifice. You're going to have to watch that monthly direct debit that comes out, or that payment at the start of the season that goes towards their clubs. I mean, speaking personally as a child, that was my Christmas present. So, like, I personally feel really disappointed that this is being touted without an immediate guarantee that fans wouldn't lose home games. I think it's a stupid idea in its entirety. But this actually worries me from a fans' relationship perspective, because I know of people who have gone to Adelaide for Gather Round, and I'll be sure to get their opinions on the concept itself having gone. But that's not every football fan can afford to do that. You know, not every football fan has access to jobs that would allow them to book flights and travel, or to take time off work and travel. You know, we're in a pretty dire economic situation, I think, for a lot of people right now. And while this isn't going to be a situation of, okay, now you get 10 home games, so let's knock the price down from, say, 500, for example, to 450.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. And that's not a crack at the AFL clubs. They need to protect their revenues.
Of course,
but fans also need to get value for money. And this just feels like another way to squeeze members off their season tickets and onto KO.
Well,
And
this is what I was saying to you last week. That's what I was saying to you last week, Jesse. It's a business. That's what they're looking at, ways to make revenue. That's what businesses do, right? But I agree with you. I agree with you in the sense that, like, having one a year, not everyone's going to be able to go or want to go for that matter. So that's fine. If smoke them if you got them. If you're going to go, you can go. Check it out. Happy days to you. But I know, like, if you're doing 3 of those a year, then I agree with you. It's not going to be not going to be financially viable. My dad and I sometimes do footy trips to Melbourne, and we'll go watch like 4 games, 5 games in a weekend. But we do that once every 3 or 4 years because it's like a treat. Having these games spread out across it, I'm worried from a perspective of a member of a footy club that the amount of footy that I'm going to be able to see personally is going to go down, and it might not even go down by 1 game. You put a little bit of trust in the AFL to schedule it as best they can, but then the counterpoint to that is, what's the point of 3 gather rounds? What's the point? It's nice having one. Like, one's a nice idea. Fine, get everyone into one place. It's a big community of footy for 1 weekend. Fantastic. I don't have a problem with that, but I don't see the need for having 3, 4. There's 2. There's no need. One's enough. Call it at 1. Everyone's happy except for Jesse.
Yes. We have 25 rounds this season, inclusive of opening round, plus 4 weeks of finals. That's already, for a premiership contending team, excluding any preseason, assuming they'd actually rock up on the first day of opening round and that's it, which we know is unrealistic. That's already 29 weeks of footy they need to be on for.
Yeah.
If they add gather round in and don't take away home games, that now goes to 31. And then you add in the realism of a preseason of at least a month, that's now 35. Now, I'm not going to come out here and say that AFL players are underpaid. They're professional athletes. They get paid to do a job that we'd all love to do. I'm not here to, bring the violin out for how much players are being paid.
Sure.
But the actual balance of power within the AFL with things like gather round, both in terms of fan relations and player relations, does alter things. And while, as you have correctly pointed out, Liam, it is a business and revenue needs to be made, are we leaning too far into being a TV product?
Oh, I think that's been the goal for some decades now, Jesse. I think the TV product has become front and center for some time, like especially when you had all the rights with 9 and 10 taking it off 7 way back at the start of the 2000s or mid 2000s, and then Channel 7 trying to fight to get it back. Now the rise of KO and other streaming services, like streaming is the way everything is going. Like everything's going to streaming. Yes. And so if you've got and KO ain't cheap. KO is not a cheap subscription by any stretch of the imagination. But that's where they want to push everything, right? So if they're going to offer all that onto KO, it's also going to then affect, attendance at games. It's going to affect. It's a cascading thing, and we might be kind of maybe catastrophizing it a little bit because it's at this stage, I believe, just an idea that's been floated or something they want to bring into effect, not actually given the green light as of yet. But I don't know. 1's enough. I think call it a day at 1. Have your feel. Move that gather round every year. Have it somewhere else. Don't need to have it in Melbourne because they have enough of those every week. And then we'll move on to, the next season. But 1's enough, Jesse. I can deal with 1.
I'll complain about 1, but I'll deal with it. I can't. I don't want a world where there's 3. I understand why there is appeal for gather round. My issue with I actually thought gather round was great last year. I don't like so many gimmick rounds early in the season. Mm-hmm. I think it makes things inconsistent and hard to follow for neutral fans. So I don't like having 2 rounds within about a month of each other, 5 weeks of each other if you want to be pedantic, that are heavily gimmicked. If you're going to do it, I've advocated from the start, make opening round gather round and put it in New South Wales and Queensland, which we actually want to grow. No disrespect to Adelaide, and they've got it for the next couple of years, but I don't think we need to grow Adelaide. Whereas there is room for growth within New South Wales and Queensland. On the topic of that, I want to touch quickly on Norwood because they want to be the 20th AFL team with a ground that I actually think would rival the Dalwallinu Demons in terms of not fit for purpose for an AFL game. It's crap, mate. I'm sorry. It's not an AFL ground.
My favorite little Instagram reel from the weekend was someone standing on the boundary line and just pointing the camera directly up the boundary line, and it was straight as an arrow. It was straight as anything else. So that it's more like it's almost like an athletics track shape, like flat on the sides, curved at the edges, at the ends. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. It's not a good ground for footy. You'd think that
I didn't mind Mount Barker, but Norwood, we played there last year against the Gold Coast, or Gold Coast. Sorry, I hate when people say the Gold Coast. We played there against Gold Coast in Gather Round last year. Good game, terrible oval. Had 2 games at Norwood this year. They had Brisbane versus North Melbourne, which was an awful game, and St Kilda versus Richmond, which was worse. So look. Neither game was probably going to set the world on fire, but it's just simply not an AFL standard ground, and that's fine. It's fine for the Sandful, but why do these rounds if we don't have enough AFL standard grounds? Which is, and again, not a crack at Tasmania here as a state, but did they have enough grounds to sustain a gather round? I mean, probably not.
Well, I think the gather round for Tasmania was meant to be Victoria-Tasmania combination, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. But no, Norwood is not a good oval to watch footy or to you need those curves, man. Footy's all about curves. Give me those curves on the sides. Give me those straight arrows. Don't want them. But no, Norwood, if they come into this competition, if they want to be, then obviously they'd probably rebuild that, because you're not going to play an AFL team at Norwood every week. They'd rebuild it. So for a couple of games in gather round, whatever. But
if it means there's not a third team in WA, go for your life.
Yeah, we don't need more teams here. We got enough. Who would it be? The Joondalup? Oh, we've done this already.
It would have to be.
Yeah, have to be. All right, let's move on from Gather Round and Norwood. What should we talk about next, Jesse? Should we talk about old mate Finlayson getting himself into a little bit of bother?
Gather Round really was the round of let's internalize our thoughts and not say them out loud across multiple games. But yes, we do need to talk about Jeremy Finlayson. For those of you who aren't aware, he, in the third quarter of Port Adelaide game against Essendon, made a homophobic comment to an Essendon player, which as of the time of recording, who that is or what specifically was said is not known. However, it's obviously a very bad look. Alistair Clarkson got into trouble with a similar slur, certainly around being a homophobic slur, in the preseason. Tex Walker's obviously had his battles with keeping his racist thoughts to himself. So we're now in a situation where we're back with another instance of vilification, discrimination, whatever you want to call it, in the AFL, and we await to see what the AFL do about it. Liam, what's your takeaway from this?
Well, I only found out about this today, basically, and it's a pretty simple take from me. There's no place in that in life, let alone sport, let alone anything else. Like, just be cool, man. We're all here trying to do our best, living our lives. Like, there's no need for that stuff. Even in the heat of battle, even in the heat of a game, like, call each other a flog, call each other a drongo, call each other, all those fun things that you say to one another. But yeah, we've moved past that, Jeremy. You know what I mean? We've moved past that stuff. Like, yeah, just be cool, man.
Melbourne also released a very short statement today, condemning racist abuse towards one of their players in the game against Adelaide on Thursday night. Now, it's a very short statement. The details are light, but the statement itself, for what it lacks in terms of word count, it doesn't lack in terms of impact. It's a very clear, categorical rejection of racism in sport. And without getting into speculation, it's pretty clear that a player at the Melbourne Football Club has been hurt by racist comments made of what we can only assume is across the fence. Because at this point, if it wasn't over the fence, we would probably know a lot more about it.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's a big problem. It's not a good look for Adelaide. Well, sorry, we can't call them Radelaide or the City of Churches. So I definitely won't call Adelaide Radelaide or the City of Churches for the rest of the show.
Why? I like calling them Radelaide.
Well, did you not see the directive from Tourism South Australia?
Oh, I didn't know what it said.
They said, don't call us Radelaide and don't call us the City of Churches. Well, so, sorry, you're being called both the rest of the podcast. And one of your Adelaide fans is apparently a racist. So, good weekend all around for Tourism SA.
Unfortunately, they are everywhere. People are just, some people equal shit sometimes, unfortunately to say. And it's a shame that we still have to talk about this and bring it up in as the years roll on, I say in 2024, this could have been 2012, it could have been 1999, it could have been the same thing. But it is a shame that this still happens. What I like to think about it, Jesse, is like, as long as you surround yourself with people who are good and kind and don't vilify and don't denigrate other people for who they are and things they can't help, surround yourself with those people. And if you find someone like that, educate them a little bit, bring them in. And if they don't want to change, well, cut them out, get rid of them. Like, put those people into a box outside and then just leave them there to rot. That's probably a bit too harsh, but still, it's get it done. Get it out of here. Don't want it.
Now, just for the avoidance of doubt on all of these, for the sake of absolute clarity for those listening in, Finlayson himself has admitted that a homophobic slur was made, and he did as much to Port Adelaide staff at 3/4 time and apologised to the player involved after the game. So he has himself said he's in the wrong. He has made steps to apologise to the relevant player, and he's admitted all of this publicly. So that will be dealt with by the AFL. The incident involving the Melbourne Football Club and the Adelaide Football Club is not yet known in terms of detail. We don't know what was said. We can't prove anything either way. We're not going to speculate. We're not going to make sweeping statements. Regardless, we are simply here to report the facts. Sometimes they are fun. Sometimes they are not.
That is true. That is true. And before we get into the games proper and throw into your total eclipse of the dart, we've made a decree for this episode, Jesse, that we're going to get this out of the way first. We're going to get this out of the way up front so that we don't go on about it for too long. And we're going to try and keep this to the point and as succinct and as calm as possible, right, Jesse? Right, correct, Jesse? Man. Yeah, okay, good man. All right, we're going to have a quick chat about we don't want to do this every week, but they keep giving us material, so we have to keep doing it. But I mean, obviously the end of the Freo Carlton game, a huge talking point out of the weekend for a number of reasons. One, very close game, good game. We'll talk about it later. But the umpiring decisions at the end didn't go to plan, didn't go well. Jordan Clark apparently had his say. Umpire didn't like that. Gave him a dissent free kick against Fremantle for 2 goals in a minute. And then the furor, the uproar began. Carlton fans saying, "Get over it, guys." Freo fans saying, "No, it's bullshit." Jesse, give everyone a more succinct rundown of what's happened in this game. Actually, umpires, before you do, just on another umpiring thing, I swear to God that score reviews are getting worse. They're going up every week. And I'm noticing that now that the goal umpires are calling score review and they've got a massive old smile on their face. Like, they know it's an inside joke now. Like, they know, which leads me to believe that it's definitely been a directive. They don't want to do it. I reckon they've been told they have to. And they're just like, well, we'll just cop it on the chin and we'll move on. That's my piece on that. Moving back to Freo Carlton.
Okay. I will start this by saying that none of this is an attack on Carlton. They're not undefeated by accident. They're playing excellent football. At the end of the day, they get the 4 points. Fremantle fans are the ones that leave that feeling stiffed. Mm-hmm. That's just how it is sometimes. I will say this, though. If the shoe was on the other foot, I would like to think there would be similar uproar from Carlton fans about this. Mm-hmm. It's just, and for those of you who haven't seen or heard the game, with about 45 seconds to go, the ball makes its way into Carlton's forward 50, having been very clearly touched by James Ash, and we'll get into the very clearly in a second. The ball is marked by Matthew Cottrell directly in front, about 25 yards from goal. He goes back and kicks it because he's an AFL player and not a child. Jordan Clark gets a little bit cross because the ball was very clearly touched, says some naughty words. Umpire blows a free kick for dissent. Another set shot, this time from Kennedy, from the same position, 20 out directly in front, goes in. Fremantle go from being 2 points up to 10 points down in the space of seconds. There's only 40 seconds left in the game. That's game over. Mm-hmm. That's the explanation out of the way. My overarching issue with this is not based on umpire 1, umpire 2, umpire 3, umpire 4. It's not an individual attack on any of the 4 umpires. It's a bad decision that they need to own up to as a collective, and the AFL has done as much and said it was the wrong decision. But I don't think that's good enough.
Okay.
Because there are 4 umpires on the field. There is cameras on every angle of this ground. We're bringing in technology, as Liam, you mentioned with the score reviews, to stamp out mistakes. And yet something so blatantly obvious, it took vision from the other side of the ground to be posted on TikTok for it to become blatantly obvious to the general public how bad of a misdecision this was. On the actual camera angle, you can see Aisha's shoulder blade move.
That's
on the reverse angle,
that's his hair
you
moving.
can see both move. Shut up, Kane.
We'll get to him. Now go on.
You fool. You alleged fool. However, the reverse shot shows the ball not only make a clear deviation in terms of line, but also a clear deviation in terms of the way the ball is spinning and moving. To me, this is the same as the Port Adelaide Richmond game a couple of weeks ago, where Jaden Short very clearly touches the ball, and you can see it on replay that he touches the ball. The alleged every goal is reviewed doesn't seem to happen, and the goal stands in a vital moment in the Port Adelaide Richmond game. Now, that had another 25 minutes to go. This had 40 seconds to go. Mm-hmm. So this is not only an obvious miscall, and I don't think, unlike previous decisions where you have a hold in the ball or a deliberate, where there's an element of subjectivity, the football is either touched or it's not, and it's very clearly touched. There is no nuance or subjectivity here. That ball came off Aisha's shoulder. It very clearly comes off Aisha's shoulder. And not only do we have 4 of what is meant to be the best quality of umpires for this sport anywhere in the world on the field, but we have a ground that's meant to be covered top to tail in cameras. And that sex shot is allowed to be taken. Like, again, not a go at Cultural or Carlton or anything like that.
No.
But that's just the wrong decision.
But okay, let me jump in. I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. So,
sure.
The score review system, right? So it sounds like you're kind of advocating for there are cameras everywhere. Why don't we review that, right? But then that would then mean that going back and leads open the door to going and reviewing every single mark that's taken in a game, which we simply can't do because they already get trigger happy with it now for goals. Imagine if it's on the field, we're going to have reviews every 3 seconds. So how do you combat?
You jumped in the wrong time.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Yes.
That's okay. I had to jump in at some stage.
You were standing, and I went to hand pass it off, and you fell for it. You fool. That's 50 meters for me.
Oh, no. Okay. All right, go on then. Continue your thought.
Because you're right, Liam. That would make the game horrendously boring. It would be like baseball or American football. I wouldn't want to watch it.
Oh, I like those spots, but okay. Go on.
The only logical option for this, and it needs to be brought in by season 2025, is a captain's challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Not a coach's challenge. They're too far away, and that would be very annoying. Captain's challenge. I think that's a pretty clear business case for a captain's challenge.
Okay.
Because Alex Pearce is one of the first players over there screaming touched.
Yeah.
At that moment, it needs to be stopped and reviewed properly.
Okay, so in that instance, so Pearce comes in, throws his little flag up that he's carrying in his pocket as the captain, and he's got like a little tag. He's got like a little tag on his arm. He can just rip one tag off and go, "I'm claiming one challenge, please, sir." And they go, "Okay, let's check it out. It's been touched." Then what? Ball up. Just kind of stop it from where the play was. If it's ball up.
Ball up. Again, each situation would be different depending on the situation of the game. But in that situation, Clark had his arms around Cottrell as soon as he'd finished marking. I think ball up's fair.
Yeah.
My biggest gripe with this is the fact that there is this much technology and that many umpires on the field, and they still get this wrong. And there is no recourse for Fremantle once that incorrect decision is made. There is nothing they can do about it. It seems to be that these type of things just follow Fremantle around between Sirengate, between the news delivered out of bounds a few years ago against Carlton. And again, that's not conspiracy theory hat on. It just seems to be that for whatever reason we're a part of this. Even the North Melbourne one last year with the deliberate out of bounds on the siren, that would have been an unsuccessful captain's challenge. But that's another example of where that could be used.
Sure.
Because the umpires decided, no, it's full time. Mm-hmm. Alex Pearce might say, I think that's very silly, throws his armband or whatever, and then we actually have a decision made based on evidence. Now, yes, you run the risk of a slightly delayed game, but is it going to be any worse than score reviews? In fact, you can do away with the score review system entirely if you have captain's challenges. Yeah. And it's better. It takes the pressure off the goal umpires in terms of having to review everything. It allows for the people involved in the game, i.e. the players, who generally speaking will have a feel for what's a good decision and what's a bad decision, to make a challenge. And it also allows us to actually give the captains more ability to lead and be leaders on the field. It's all well and good to do the coin toss and do the huddle and show some leadership. Plenty of captains do it differently, not to go at anyone in particular. But I just give the captains the ability to challenge this, because that decision was wrong, and now one team is 4 points poorer because of it.
I guess, well, potentially. We would have had to still go back and score the other way, but
yes.
Potentially. We don't know what's going to happen, but I get your point. I guess with the challenge system in other sports, like let's take NBA, for example, they do a challenge. There is, or in cricket, actually cricket's not a good example. We'll go basketball. An unsuccessful challenge costs them a timeout. Obviously, there's no timeouts in AFL. So would there be any sort of ramification for an unsuccessful challenge, or like cricket, it's just a case of you've lost a challenge?
I think it's set number. I think you get
set number
2 or 3 a game. I wouldn't give it any more because that allows for blatant time wasting. But I don't think there's necessarily a need to make it, because in that situation there, I mean, that was the wrong call, so the ball would just be turned over. But in a hypothetical world where that ball wasn't touched by Aish and Cottrell marks it fair and square, you could give a 50-metre penalty and put it in the goal square. That's an option. Or you should just make it purely numerical. Okay, you lose your challenge. That's something that can be worked through. We don't need to have exactly the answer of how it looks right now, because they're not going to do it this season.
No.
But the conversation needs to start. They need to. Because the current use of camera technology in the AFL is shambolic compared to how it's used in other leagues.
I will tell you why it would be good, and we'll wrap up on this so we can move on. But I reckon one reason why it would be good is if they're going to be going for TV stuff, what's more dramatic than a captain's challenge? How drama? So much drama. Oh, is it going to be successful or is it not? Oh, is it going to be overturned? Oh, what's going to happen? Oh, see? TV. Think about it, AFL. It's a beautiful idea that Jess is giving you on a platter, a silver platter, no less. But no, I think for the sake of not sounding like a bitter Freo supporter, and to be fair, I was on the day. I've since calmed down, but that's what footy's like. On the day you lose a close one in funny circumstances, you tend to get a little bit riled up. But we had our chances. We had our opportunities to put things away. So it's not a case of like that cost us the game. It was just one factor at the end of the game, and because of the timeliness of that particular decision and the alleged abuse that Clarkey gave, which he's apparently come out and said he was just cursing himself, and the umpire actually thought he was cursing him. Who knows? That could be a case of Clarkey getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar and going, oh, no, that Stevie did it, not me. You know what I mean? It could have been a case of that. Who knows? But I said to you, I watched it back, and when I watched it, I was expecting Clarkson to be in the umpire's face going absolutely hammer and tong. He looked calm. He looked stoic. He looked very like a regular Jordan Clark. And I was like, wait, what did he even say to him? It must have been a whisper, pardon me, of something. But for the umpire to essentially end the game there, based on what was said in what was a tense situation, I think is a bit rubbish. Like, I think the umpires shouldn't have to put up with abuse, absolutely, no. But there's a level to that, and unless old Clarkey went up to him and said, "I hope." I won't make something up, but he says something really, really abhorrent to him, then fine.
I hope X, Y, and Z happens to you and your family.
Exactly right. Then fine. Then, Jordan Clark's got something to learn from that. But it didn't seem like it was that. It seemed very, very like casual abuse, if it was abuse, or dissent. It didn't seem worthy of such a big penalty. But hey, look, until we know what he actually said, we can't really say much more. But we'll talk about the game in a little bit more detail once we get to it. I nearly called you Jeremy. Jesse.
That is not my name.
No, it's not your name at all. Jesse. Sorry, mate. I don't know why I had Jeremy on the mind.
That's okay. Probably Finlayson.
Probably Finlayson. Thank you for saving me in that moment. It's your time. It's your time to shine. Total Eclipse of the Dart is ready. It's here. And we've already had a little bit to go over, so I'm intrigued to see what you're going to cover tonight. This is where Jesse gets 2 minutes to just go on a rant, unabridged, unabided, and your 2 minutes starts right about now.
Hello, Liam. Hello, listeners. Hello. It's time to rant.
Jesse.
I'm concerned about the media, and this is a bit of a crossover with one of the other segments we do called the punty, but we need to talk about the way that the Brisbane scandal has been handled and publicised versus the way the AFL drug scandal has been handled and publicised. Because there's seemingly been a lot of state-sponsored media, Damien Barrett, very happy to talk about the Brisbane scandal ad nauseum, but very, very light on the commentary and detail when it comes to potentially systemic manipulation of the AFL drugs policy. Now, again, we have covered this in its own special episode. I don't want to go too in-depth because we only have 2 minutes. However, what I will say is that every time one of these Brisbane stories comes out, and there was one about Lachie Neale's part that I haven't read because I think the whole thing is crap, that just makes me think that this is such a desperate move to get the attention off up to 100 players allegedly having illicit drug tests covered up. It is so frustrating as someone who I'd like to think has a brain to want to hear this story followed through and actually need to see a natural conclusion, and then all of a sudden, crickets. Absolute crickets in the public domain. It's very frustrating to have silly stories about what happened on a trip to America and maybe Vegas and maybe Nashville and maybe South Dakota because we don't know, because we don't actually need to know. Whereas a systemic, decades-long manipulation of illicit drug use statistics in the AFL is absolutely something that I feel the fans as a whole need to know. It seems to be another example of a very sacrificial lamb being thrown in while the AFL has not only this to deal with, but also some very problematic CTE court cases to deal with. Liam's given me the countdown. That's all I have to say. Can we please have some actual media reporting on the drug scandal? Thank you.
Gone quiet, hasn't it? It's gone quiet on the old scandal front. I mean, it is gather round after all.
Shush. What I will add as a bit of bonus content here is it's not just the fact that it's an AFL drug scandal. It could be anything related to do with the administrative body itself, like the CTE. It's just the fact that there's an unwillingness to go against the grain here and actually report. Rory Love almost got this, actually. He almost got the total eclipse of the dart this week, but I didn't want to do a personal attack on one player.
That's fair.
However, because quite literally an hour after we publicised our episode, actually an hour after you published the reel last week, I reckon that TikTok from Rory Love dropped, and it was diabolically bad. So thank you, Rory, for making me tweet.
I didn't even get it. I watched it. You sent it to me. I was like, I don't understand what he's doing. What is even happening right now? Can you explain it to an old man?
I got it. I really wish I didn't because it was genuinely terrible. Okay. Look, we actually we can spend 30 seconds on this. I think it's worth doing. Rory's absolutely entitled to express himself. Himself and his girlfriend are quite active on TikTok and social media. That's fine. I don't have a problem with a player having a personality, but gee, it's not a good look to be really pumping up this VFL angle given the money that he's probably on. I think it's a bit insensitive to Bulldogs fans, and I can't see him getting back into the seniors anytime soon, unless it's an injury to one of Darcy, Ugelhagen, Norton.
Well,
English.
Apparently there are teams already circling apparently for old Rory for next season, so we'll see where that ends up. Now, Jesse, your favourite round gather round has just finished, so we have to talk about a few games. Now, listen, I think just an overall recap of the round is that I don't know if there's a clear front runner anymore. I don't think that there is a team who's putting their hand up to be like, yep, I am this season's number one GOAT. A lot of teams are starting to kind of come.
Good.
What's that? I know 100%.
Good.
Absolutely. 100%. And even competition is a good competition. You've got probably a few down the bottom who are struggling, one of which I'm excited to talk about later on. Not in a bad way, in a good way. But you've got, Dogs and Cats look fairly even. Freo Carlton look pretty even. Richmond and Saints look pretty even. Now, those aren't all the same level, but there's teams starting to kind of clump together. And I think Gather Round showed us a lot in that regard. So what we'll do is we'll jump into the games. We can go through them. One of these games I have not seen because KO, which I pay for, didn't have a mini for it. So I couldn't watch any of the highlights or nothing. But hopefully Jesse can bail us out there and we'll just talk about something delightful. Adelaide 8-15-63, defeated by Melbourne 10-18-78 to kick off Gather Round. Adelaide finally showing a little bit of the footy we were expecting of them at the start of the year. They just left it a bit too late, kind of like they did with the Suns. They got down by 5-6 goals and then finished strong. Good to see them having that play and seeing what they can do and the good footy they can play. But once again, just kind of kept the queue in the rack for too long.
Yes, they did. Now, I listened to the first half on radio while going out for a nice run on Thursday afternoon. First of all, it was really refreshing to actually hear different voices, and also as much. And again, actually, I'm going to be careful what I say here. But there is one station in particular that employs a lot of commentators that have crossover with Fox that is very advertisement heavy, and that's not a criticism. That's probably a fact. But even with 18 million ads being mentioned within a 5-minute space, it's a lot better to listen to than 7. And I actually got the sense of what was happening in the game without it in front of me. And that is a credit to that specific commentary team. So again, don't want to name names, bit of a conflict of interest for me. You can read between the lines there. But look, I think it was a very good performance from... What are you doing? Put those down.
Read between the lines, Jesse. Read between the lines.
I thought you were giving me a 3-minute warning.
That'd be a 2-minute warning, if anything. All right, let's push on.
Okay. Thank you for distracting me mid-conversation. Melbourne, I don't think that was Melbourne's best performance. I think they get 4 points and they go home and they'll be happy with that. Adelaide, I know they've only lost by 15 against a pretty good side, but this job is slipping away from Matthew Nicks. The reluctance to do things like put Rochelle in the midfield is hurting his stance within the fan base. And based on what I've seen across multiple social media platforms, which, look, isn't always gospel, but it does need to be considered, there seems to be a growing sense of frustration across multiple facets of the club, including what has been a pretty bad few years in drafting. But I don't think this Adelaide list should be where they are. And that's a problem. Now, yes, they've only lost by 2 goals and change here. But I would start to worry unless results come in about Matthews. I think he is potentially the most under pressure coach in the AFL as of this conversation.
Yeah, it's probably fair to say. It's just those late starts, man. That's what's doing them in the close ones. Like, they're showing that they can fight. They're showing they can get back into it, but man, you just can't leave it till the third quarter to start playing. You just can't do that. But no, yeah, agree. I don't really have much else to add about this game, Jesse. How about you?
No, just Ben Brown seems to have a lot of the keys to Melbourne's kingdom in his hands. When he's not on, Melbourne really have to grind out wins. When they are on, when he is on, they look a lot better. We saw the former on Thursday night. They still get the points. No real damage done in that regard. But I think he's going to play a very, very big role in Melbourne's top 4, top 8 premiership aspirations this year.
I was looking at Ben Brown, and his run-up is still quite long, right? And I was thinking about this from a time perspective, right? So you take the mark, you go back on your mark as far as he goes back. Like, he actually gets a jog on to go back to the end of his mark, right? The clock keeps running, right? So as long as you start your run-in with 30 seconds, after 30 seconds, right? That time just keeps coming off the clock. How far can Ben go back before the mark is no longer there? I've never thought about the mark being like backwards. You know what I mean? But can he just keep going back for days and days?
I would have loved Cottrell going to the other goal square for his set shot against. That would have been very funny. And it would have taken 40 seconds off the clock. So, we wouldn't have even had the descent free kick to talk about. That would have been very funny.
That would have been hilarious. All right, let's move on to game number 2. Brisbane get their first win of the season. Hooray. 16-16, 112. Defeating North 6-6-42. Meh. Do we have to talk about this at all?
We do, only in that McCluggage with 36, arguably career best game for him. Mm-hmm. He looked very good. Sheasel as well, 35 in a losing side. He's a gun, and he's going to be a genuine star for North Melbourne. That's individual performances, team-wise. It was going to happen, wasn't it? I mean, North are where they are. Brisbane probably aren't where they would have hoped they would be at this point in the season. It's honestly hard to take anything out of that in terms of, wow, Brisbane are back, or wow, North aren't progressing, because we know North are progressing.
Yeah.
They've just run into a side with top 4 talent that isn't currently a top 4 performing team.
Yeah, no, it's funny because anytime you get a 70-point smashing, you're probably like, oh my God, Brisbane played at their skin. And look, they played fine. But like you said, that against North, they did what they were meant to do. And you can't get too excited about it, given that that's their first win of the season. Oh, boy. All right, we'll move on. Unless you got anything else. I'm just going to keep playing through because I don't have anything to say. Port Adelaide 17-9, 111, defeating Essendon 6-6-42. Listen, Port Adelaide looked pretty good in this game. Rosie looked amazing, and he was kind of like the ringleader. He brought everyone along with him. They went hard for the ball. They didn't stop. This is a 70-point win that you look at and you're like, okay, all right, Port, you calm yourself down. And one that you look at Essendon and go, all right, okay, what the hell are you guys doing?
Let's start with the victors, because to the victors goes the talking. Port do look very good. Mm-hmm. They didn't get the job done against Melbourne in a close game, but apart from that, they have been, in my opinion, just about the best side in the competition this year. I'll give them probably second in terms of where I think they are. Mm-hmm. They are looking very good. They get to play Fremantle next week. That is going to be a very good game. Mm-hmm. But in terms of overall, I mean, Rosie, you mentioned with 36, Horn Francis with 31.
He was good too, yeah.
The most exciting part about Port is that their core players still seem to have so much to offer in terms of development. Like, you're probably only looking at Butters being a year or 2 away from absolute peak. Rosie the same. Horn Francis probably 3. So you're getting into that point now where you're thinking they have to go in the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Their biggest thing now is a key forward and pray that Georgiades stays healthy, because if Georgiades stays healthy and can take that next step, look out.
Yeah, he looked good. He looked good for his first game back. He looked pretty good. I won't lie.
Charlie Dixon, I think, is still one of the most individually valuable players in the competition because of the command he has over that forward 50. He doesn't need to be a 50-goal a season forward. He can kick 30, but still have a massive impact. And I think that is what his role is this year, is to be that veteran, reliable tradesman presence, almost, your Daniel Bradshaw, that allows a Jonathan Brown to go and flourish, or a Scott Lucas for a Matthew Lloyd. He doesn't have to be the big show. He can go and be that guy who is reliable, and it's definitely a target that you have to put time into, but doesn't have to be, the lion tamer, the juggler. He doesn't need to do the tightrope. He doesn't need to be the whole circus of Port Adelaide. He can play that individual role within the team. Mm-hmm. I like Port. This is a very, very big season for them. Their 3-year window starts now for me. They've got 24, they've got 25, they've got 26. I'd be pretty disappointed looking at the list they've got, assuming there's no, cataclysmic injury crisis or player retention crisis, if they don't leave with a cup in the next 3 years.
Mm. Yeah, fair to say. I think Port's one of those teams where you've always had them kind of penciled in to go deep in September for a little bit of time already, for the last few years at least. So yeah, I agree with you. Like watching them play now, they seem to play as a team. They seem to play for each other. So I wouldn't surprise me if they go far this year and beyond. So do it before they get too old, right, Jesse? They get all old and broken. They have to get new kids in. Speaking of new kids, this one surprised me a little bit, Jesse. West Coast Eagles, 11, 12, 78.
Poor Essendon.
Sorry. Go back to Essendon. I forgot. I literally honestly forgot we didn't speak about them. That's how much I go on. What you got to say about Essendon?
They really are the stealth bombers in this podcast. Look, it's probably more of a reflection of where Essendon are, and that is not currently a top 8 side. They were pretty comfortably hated. Zach Merritt is continuing to have a career best season. Nick Martin is starting to fill his role really nicely as well. There are positives for Essendon. It's just not this year. And that's okay because they're picking up wins against sides that are around them, like St Kilda, like Hawthorn. They're picking up wins in that bracket. So it's not going to be probably as bad as I maybe went into the season thinking it could be, but they're still pretty comfortably a few lengths off the top 8 based on what we've seen here. All right, Liam, they've dropped their payloads. They're back in the hangar. You may continue.
I think I got too excited about my kid's segue into West Coast that I was like, I'm going to roll with that. That sounds great.
I really did put the fire extinguisher all over that.
That's okay. That's okay. To be fair, we hadn't spoken about Essendon yet, so it makes sense. West Coast, 11, 12, 78, defeated by Sydney, 15, 14, 104. This for the longest time in this game, I was like, can the Eagles actually do this? Because they were playing some pretty good footy. Bless them. Bless their hearts. I mean, at the end of the day, I think Sydney might have had a little bit of the, it's just the Eagles. Who cares? You know, a bit of the arrogance about them, and they came out there thinking it was going to be an easy win. That's what it stank of from me from Sydney. They didn't look like they didn't respect the Eagles, and the Eagles nearly made them pay. And I was praying for it. I was like, come on, boys. Come on. This would be hilarious. Go on.
I think I messaged you at one stage.
Yeah.
If West Coast knock off my premiership picks, I'm going to take a dive off the South 32 tower. And that was what it was looking like for a little bit. It was looking like West Coast could do it. And look, yes, it's a loss. Yes, they have not won yet this season, but that's what they needed.
Yeah,
Harley Reid. Did you know Harley Reid grabbed his jumper? I haven't heard about it 45,000 times. Good for him. Good for Harley.
No, it's good for Harley. Good for him to show some. Show some. Also, apparently, he is the most hyped draft pick of all time, according to Kelly Underwood. The most hyped draft. She thinks it's 2014 though, so who knows what she's on about. What are your thoughts on that, Jesse? Is he the most hyped draft pick of all time?
I wouldn't categorically reject it.
Okay.
But I think it's also worth us considering we are oversaturated to his presence because
it's true.
He has been the back page of the paper in this state for the last 5 months. Last 7 months. That's fine. But I'd also argue you can't overlook a guy like Nick Dacos, can you?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. I would have thought so. And that wasn't that long ago. But anyway, it's okay. But no, it was good to see the Eagles go. But what do you take out of that for Sydney? Any danger signs? Any worries?
Danger signs, not necessarily. I really think they went into that, as you said, not particularly caring. I think they were there for the Barossa Valley, not for the game of football. That was the vibe I got from the way they played. They won. They got the job done. I would have liked to see a little bit more from them, having lost to Richmond last week. But in saying that, their record's still pretty good. They're where they need to be ladder-wise. Yeah.
Yeah, can't complain too much about that, can you? No, I think who have they got next week? Let's have a look. They got the bye next week, so that's probably why they were so chill. They were like, get the 4 points, go on holiday. Actually, they probably did bounce out to the Barossa for a little bit. Get the flight back to Sydney tomorrow. Goodness me. All right, here we go. Freo 9-9-63, defeated by Carlton 10-13, 73.
No, next game.
Okay, Western Bulldogs.
Don't want to talk about it anymore.
I know. We got to do it though because we decided to do a podcast on things. Okay.
Yes.
look, you had to like what you saw from Freo. Like this is not the football I was expecting we would get from Freo this year, and it's looking coherent. It's looking nice up until the forward entries. Those still have a long ways to go to be effective. But to take on Carlton, who's tipped to be up there, I had them as minor premiers this year, and they've started off undefeated. To take them and not have a margin of 10 either way for the entire game, pretty impressive. You can't be too sad about that. Fifey got his throat all cut up, which was nice. 1 week for I don't even know who did it to him. It was all a blur. Fogarty. Was it Fogarty? Was it Fogarty?
Yes.
Terrible spoil. One week for him. They're handing out 1 week like they candy at the moment. It's fantastic. But no, Jesse, what say you? What say you about this game and Freo and Carlton?
Fremantle just have a few vacant spots in terms of actual best 22 players, and these are the games where that hurts them. Jordan Clark, this is hard because he had a phenomenal game outside of that last 45 seconds. And it's very unfair that is what his performance will be remembered for, because he was burnt. Jeremy Sharp, I don't know whether it was a utilisation problem or a not wanting to be there problem at the Gold Coast, but this seems like a little bit of a high spot for Fremantle. He is really taken like a black duck to water in the Swan River on that wing. You know, he's looking like the swan that we need to elegantly glide down the wing and make things happen. Let's talk Carlton, though, because Carlton are the real deal this season. They will be in the finals, in my opinion. They, in my opinion, should be towards the top half of that finals bracket. They don't need to smash teams every game. There was a bit of, I think, flippantness about, Freo haven't beaten much, they've caught teams at the right time. In many ways, that's true. However, Carlton are able to eke out wins in close games, and they're able to do it with seemingly absolute consistency. I don't think Mackay and Curnow dominated, and they still got the 4 points. That's a big positive for them. They can roll on with this. Their guys stood up. Cripps, Hewitt, they're big-bodied midfielders. They know what they're doing. Carlton are probably... I still think they're probably 2 spots away, best 22-wise, from being an absolute lock for that top 4 based on team quality. I think there's other teams match up that are better than Carlton, but you cannot deny their team spirit and the peaks of their individual quality are up there with some of the best in the competition.
Right up there. No, I agree. Blues up there with the team that I'm liking to watch this year. So obviously would have been nice to get the win as a Freo fan, but also seeing a game that was actually, a good contest was nice as well. Was very nice.
Yes.
Moving right along, Western Bulldogs 14-7-91 defeated by Geelong 14-11-95. I checked the score of this game about halfway through the third quarter, and I thought, Geelong have got this in the bag. And then the Bulldogs went, no, you don't. And they started coming back pretty solidly at the end. Couldn't quite get there. Very close. It looked like a hard, even forward contest through the night. Running pressure. 2 teams that looked actually very similar. And I guess they kind of showed in the final score as well. And this is what I was saying before about the clumps. And I put Bulldogs and Geelong together because watching that game, it looked like the same team playing each other. Like when you got Mortal Kombat, you've got Scorpion versus Scorpion, but one's a slightly different color, so you can tell who's who. That's kind of how this game felt to me. It was two very similar teams going hammer and tong.
The Western Bulldogs love to share the ball around. Treloar with 37, Bont with 35, Liberatore with 35. Their midfielders were getting their hands on the pill. They still couldn't get the job done. And that's got to be a genuine question mark for them. Yes, it's a goal margin less than that, but I just don't think the Bulldogs are mentally there. They seem like they seem like a club that's just not quite at the level that they probably should be at the moment. Geelong have potentially been the surprise packet of this season.
Let's go back to that point. Because I want to dive on that one a little bit more. Not mentally there. They seemed like they were mentally there going for that win. What do you mean by not mentally there?
I just think there's too many question marks about what's going on at the club behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
You've got uncertainty over Beveridge. You've got the Roy Lobb situation. I'm hesitant to dive in and say, yep, okay, the Bulldogs can build off this win. Build off this narrow loss. There's just not enough there for me yet.
Okay.
I don't think they'll make finals this year. I'm happy to wear that and say I don't think they'll make finals this year. I didn't think Geelong would at the start of the season. They keep winning.
We said this too,
yeah,
though. We said this about Geelong. We said this.
Yeah.
We said at the start, we're like, you know what, they'll prove us wrong. And here we are. And they're undefeated. Bloody hell.
As per.
As per. All right. Well, sorry, and I cut you off, but you're about to speak about Geelong. I don't want to do the same thing and go into the next game without giving you time to speak about the other team who played this game.
That's okay. We'll talk about it briefly. They win games of football. A lot of these guys have been doing this for a decade plus. They know what they're doing, and they win. And yes, they probably ran out of legs late in the game, but they got the job done. And they are very clearly a hard side to beat. They've won close games now against St Kilda and the Western Bulldogs, who were two teams that we probably had in that general clump around each other. They are winning games when they need to, which is every week, because that's what you need to do in this competition. And they are continuing now to raise the bar in terms of premiership points and distancing themselves from teams like Brisbane, who have not started the season well, and we probably have finishing above them. Brisbane have got to catch, 3 games? Adelaide got to catch 4. So there's going to be a point in the season now where they're going to start running out of time if Geelong keep winning games.
Yeah. And I think they will continue that run for a little bit of time. They've got a pretty good run coming up. So you wouldn't want to say that Geelong are going to go into the bye with at least 8 or 9 wins under their belt at this stage.
What is 2009?
What do you mean?
Geelong going 10, 11 games at the start of the season.
So I doubt myself so much. I say something and then then you say something. I'm like, oh God, what did I say? What did I say? Was I wrong? I'm old. I'm older than you. All right. Let's move on. We've got to get through these games. I am. That's true. Gold Coast Suns 13-11-89 defeated by the GWS Giants 18-19-117.
Plucky, but this is where the problems are for the Gold Coast.
Okay, go.
They can't see out 4 quarters of football at this stage. And they got away with it in the first couple of weeks of the season. And the Vibe Cup was on. And there does seem to be a couple of wheels falling off.
My Vibe Cup was
didn't you have them in the 8?
Yeah, I had them 8th, yeah. My Vibe Cup has gone bad because I also had Adelaide in my Vibe Cup as well. And, here we are. But, I mean, they're 2-2. It's pretty good.
Look, it is. That's not to say they've been horrible this season. They haven't been. They've shown some really good pieces of football. But it's becoming a consistent issue now where in 3 of the 4 games, they've completely capitulated towards the end and either barely won or lost. And in the other game against the Bulldogs, they just couldn't string together consistent football for more than a quarter at a time. And they were beaten resoundingly. Yeah. So it becomes a real issue for them later in the season, unless they can fix this, because that will start dropping more and more games. GWS, I think going in, we probably expected them to win by more, but they've kicked 117. It's not like they've, scraped home. They continue to put scores on the board more often than not. They've got a fantastic forward line that's fun to watch. They are a team that I didn't have in the finals. Whoops. But they look like they are really starting to get going at this time.
Yeah. No, I definitely had them in the finals, I'm pretty sure. When you said you didn't, I was like, what? What? Why?
That was my risk, and that risk has not paid off.
Well, no, I had Adelaide in the 8 as well. And yeah, I mean, we move on. It's a predictor. You don't know what's going to happen, do you? You don't know what's going to happen.
It's a bit of fun.
Isn't it? Moving on, Richmond, 9... Richmond, 9-6-60, defeated by St Kilda, 9-13-67. Don't get too far from that camera, Jesse. Come on back, mate. You're going way too far away. Way too far away.
I'd actually fallen asleep because you mentioned the Richmond-St Kilda game.
We actually don't have to talk about the first half at all. I think I checked the score because, full disclosure, we were watching WrestleMania today because we're cool. And halfway through, I put on this at the end of that game, at the end of WrestleMania, it was about halftime. And in the second quarter, it was 1-1 to like 1-7. And those goals came at the end of that quarter. There was nothing happening. So we don't have to talk about the first quarter at all. I watched the second half. The second half actually was quite kind of entertaining because you had two teams who were, again in a little clump together, fighting hard for a win. And that was about the most exciting part of that game, is that they were fighting for a win. Not much more to say about it.
St Kilda just seemed to catch teams at the right time. And it happened with Collingwood. It's happened with Richmond here. Richmond, I think, will walk away from this game pretty disappointed to not have 4 points. And if St Kilda fans were realistic, they'd walk away saying, we are pretty lucky to have 4 points here. I don't think either team will feature in finals. If either of them do, I think it'll be a pretty swift exit. Richmond need key players back, and it killed them today. It absolutely eviscerated their chances of winning with a four-quarter performance. They threw it all on the line last week against Sydney and got the win, but they're starting to see the side effects of that now in terms of guys like Lynch, Bolton not being there. It's hard to win games without so many of your key players, and that's what happened today to the Richmond Football Club. I'd be more bullish about them than St Kilda, because for a team that's had, in my opinion, some undeserved hype, they're not that good.
Rossi didn't look too happy at the end of the game either. Like Rossi wasn't happy with the performance. I mean, when is he? But I think he knows as well. Like, it's probably not his team's best day at the Oval. All right, let's move on to this game though. I was trying to rush through them because I wanted to talk about this one. Get rid of that rubbish. Richmond St Kilda. Bah. Collingwood 11-11-77 defeated the Hawks. Oh my God, so close. 11-6-72. I'm just on the Hawks bandwagon this year. I don't know why, but man, that was a gallant fighting effort from the Hawks. And despite losing, you can't be too upset with them. Like, taking the reigning premiers on like they did was really, really cool to see. Like, they given that game another minute, who knows what would have happened. But
I know we're banned from talking about it, but Quainer delivered out of bounds, yes or no?
At the very end?
Yes.
See, here's the thing.
He walks over the line, Liam.
He does. So based on this year's stuff, yes. But I have a lot of issues with that rule in general, and how they've decided to interpret a lot of the time, getting slung in a tackle and kicking it, and it just goes to nobody, but then goes out. Insufficient attempt. What are you talking about? They're not consistent with it, so I can't get too upset with it. No. But there was enough quote unquote pressure around, because there was a player right there next to him, for the umpires to not call it. So I can see why they potentially didn't. It wasn't egregious and it wasn't blatant. So I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. Jesse, are you?
I think based on this year's interpretation, it was deliberate, but I also agree with you in terms of the fact that we need to actually consider what the rule is there for. So at the end of the day, I'm okay with it, but you see a lot less obvious ones paid.
You see ones that aren't paid, like that aren't deliberate paid as.
We also need to talk about the man of the game, and he was always going to be certainly the subplot of the game, but
the revenge game.
I'm going to make this a yes or no question as well. Is Ginnivan hard done by the umpires? Yes or no?
Yes.
Completely agree. I actually think it's a disgrace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
his head was taken off.
Yeah. There you go.
Blatantly, and that rule seems to not exist anymore, or it only exists for the most finicky contact.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to bring back our WrestleMania reference before, JBL could start absolutely leathering people with clotheslines from hell without turning to face the ball, and that seems to be play on now. Mm-hmm. But yet genuine attempts to play the ball seem to be a free kick. It's confusing. It's so confusing. And to me, that's clear as day that Ginnivan's been, interfered with front on contact. But apparently it's not to the umpires there. There was also one early in the game, contact below the knees. I think Tagoe got the free kick, where the umpire 100 metres away has paid it with two umpires closer. Mm-hmm. These guys aren't functioning as a unit across the board. But bringing it back to the actual game itself, They didn't get the 4 points. It's a massive boost for Hawthorn mentally, but also for Collingwood because they've shown they can now do it again. They can eke out close results. They can get the job done. They can get 4 points. Should they have beaten Hawthorn by more in terms of player versus player? Yes. Does this have also a genuine psychological boost for their chances as well this season? I think also yes.
Interesting. I would have thought the opposite because
agree,
obviously, not really. I mean, I think if you've got like a team like you're the reigning premiers, right? You should be, and everyone's expecting you to contend again. So when it comes to games like this against Hawthorn, you would expect that your game is far superior to a team who was developing like Hawthorn. And and I know that footy's funny, like sports funny in general. Sometimes you can catch a team on a bad day, but Collingwood what are they now? They're 2-3, right? They've had their chances throughout the year already. This was a game they needed to come out and go and stamp themselves as being back, and they didn't do it. And so I think it's not that exciting for them at all. I think they'll be happy to get the 4 points. Obviously, exciting. No, it's not exciting, but it's good for them to get the 4 points. Obviously, that's the key at the end of the day. But I just don't think they're not going into games now with the same kind of fear as they may have done. At the start of the season, everyone would be going in just ticking that Collingwood box every single time. And now if Hawthorn can take them to the limit, maybe that isn't maybe that fear isn't there anymore. That's what I got out of it. I love to see Hawthorn. Like I love seeing them like a good young team fighting to the end. Shame they didn't quite get there. I was actually standing watching the game like they were on my team. I was like, oh, come on, boys, get it. Come on. Didn't quite get there in the end, but that's okay.
Did you have your Lloyd Meek Guernsey on as well?
Meeky boy, he's won his place back in the side, which is nice. He kind of went on the
good on him.
Yeah, good on him. He was kind of out of sight, out of mind for a little while, so it's good to see him back and getting some footy in. Had a pretty good game too, did old Lloyd. Well done. He did. Yeah, he did. He was never getting that time at Freo, so good on him for taking a chance elsewhere. And yeah, cool. All right.
Guess what, Liam? We don't have to say gather round again until next April.
Surprise gather round in round 11 this year.
I will end the podcast if there's another gather round this season. Because I simply won't talk about it. You could find someone at the front of St. George's Terrace to drag into the podcast with you because I wouldn't do it if there's another gather round this season. I think it's novel crap.
I know you do. All right, let's quickly go to the tips from last week. 8 for Jesse, perfect 9 for me. That was where that was the Saints Richmond tip that we differed on.
Oh, peanuts, Richmond.
I just did that because you chose Richmond. I didn't want everyone to choose the same thing again, like we do every week. Yeah. So that takes you to 27 and me to 28, taking a 1
you
point
clever boy
over. Thank you so much, Jesse. Thank you so much. We'll quickly run through the ladder. Giants sitting on top, still undefeated, 4 wins. Demons 4-1. Swans 4-1, and the Blues with 4 wins, undefeated. Rounding out the top 4. Cats, Power, Dockers have fallen, haven't they? 2nd to 7th in 1 fell loss. Crikey Moses. Cats 5th, Power, Dockers, and the Bulldogs rounding out the top 8. Bulldogs 2-2. The rest of those teams at 3-1. Then you got the rest: Saints and Suns and Magpies and Bombers. That's too many ands in a sentence. I'm sure you'll forgive me. All on 2 wins. You got Lions and Tigers with 1, and then Crows, Hawks, Eagles, and Kangas rounding out the bottom 4. At least Eagles got a few percentage points back, so that's good for them. All right, let's go to... They were at 43% last week. 43%. They're at 50 now, which is great. P's get degrees. All right, round 5. Let's go through our tips for the next round. Byers, Collingwood, and Sydney. Like we mentioned before, one more round of buys next week to round everyone back out to normal from the opening round.
Before we do give our tips.
Yes, go for it, Jesse. Yes.
Now, I have to come across as quite miserable and hateful on this podcast, and in many ways that's fair. But I'm actually happy about something at the moment. I'm very happy about something.
What's up?
I'm over the moon. You can probably tell by the smile on my face that I'm happy. And this actually isn't sarcastic either. So this is actually a genuinely happy moment on this show for the first time.
This is rare. This is rare, folks. Drink it in. What's up, Jesse? What's got you so happy?
Daylight savings is finished. We have 5:30 Friday night games again. Hallelujah.
Hey.
We could stop having games at silly hours. and we can actually have Friday night footy. I am delighted to see that 5:30 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time on top of the Melbourne-Brisbane game, which is our first to preview on the Thursday night, Liam. This should be fun for not just the time, but for the match itself.
Agree. I went to Melbourne, Brisbane at the G last year, and it was quite the game, let me tell you. So hopefully they can recreate it this year. Interesting game though. So you would think that based on current form, Melbourne would get the win. So I'm going to go Melbourne to get the win by 3 goals.
I was waiting for there. I was like, I get my tip back in the first game of the round. Perfect.
Yeah. Well, if I chose Brisbane.
Yeah, I thought you were going to err on the side of silliness. But no, look, Melbourne for me.
Yeah.
Again, Brisbane haven't come out and said to me they can play the MCG yet. I also think they're not quite far in the level they need to be. And Melbourne seem to be just churning along well. I bet this is probably the real test case for my Ben Brown theory with them.
Sure.
Against a robust Brisbane defence. I'm very interested to see how that dynamic plays out. But yes, I think Melbourne for me, it will hopefully be a really good Thursday night game. I think it should be.
Should be.
I'm very hopeful. Fingers
crossed. Fingers crossed.
So we get a fun Thursday night game, Liam. And then we get the Friday night one. Fun.
Look, I actually think this might be a fun game.
Okay.
Who's playing, Jesse? Who's playing?
The Western Bulldogs are playing Essendon at Marvel. Oh, I'm so excited.
Friday night footy. I don't know who's going to win this.
They're not a sponsor.
I don't know whose advert is that?
That would be a certain fried chicken establishment that may or may not.
Is it? Okay. Hey, look, good jingle. I remembered it and didn't even know what you were selling. Good job. What do you reckon? I think Bulldogs, right? It's gonna be Bulldogs, right?
Does it?
I don't know. I don't know. There's a few games this week where I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. You know what? I need my tip back. Essendon. I know they were flogged. I know they were flogged. But I don't know where either of these sides actually are yet. And I don't think it's as simple as brushing aside Essendon here. I think they can pinch this. Western Bulldogs probably deserve to be favourites and should be favourites and probably should win. But I'm just not sold on them yet. And I think they're vulnerable in these type of games.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Like, it's really, honestly, this is a coin toss because you don't know. Like, Essendon could come up and turn it on. Bulldogs could capitulate and vice versa. You don't know. Who knows? But we'll go.
Not me.
Bulldogs for me, Essendon for Jesse. Moving on. What's the next game, Jesse? Who's up next?
Well, we have a 11:45 Australian Western Standard Time bounce down here for GWS versus St Kilda. We're in the nation's capital. We're in Canberra. And GWS win. Next game, Carlton versus Adelaide at 2:35 at Marvel Stadium.
Wait a second. I got to give my tip, Jesse. You can't just do that. Is it going to be St Kilda? I was going to give you a fun tidbit. I used to live 2 blocks from Monaco Oval in Canberra, so it was always fun to. Yeah, I did. And do you remember that game where it snowed there? I was on my balcony and I could see the snow falling as it was on the TV and outside my window. It was very exciting and very cold.
I'm so sorry.
That was nice. Canberra's lovely. GWS will win. Yes, correct.
It's pretty simple. I think this could be the biggest margin of the weekend.
Yeah, it could be.
This could be a flogging. Carlton versus Adelaide at Marvel Stadium. Had you asked me about this match at the start of the season, I would have been really excited for it. Less so now. I mean, Carlton really should win.
Carlton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, Adelaide desperately need to build off that performance last week against Melbourne, or they didn't get the job done. They have to show something here.
0-5 would be a terrible start to the season. So, it's,
they can't make finals if they start 0-5.
No, not at all. Not at all. But it's a long way back for them anyway.
It's an April final.
Yeah, it's a long way back for them anyway. But they need to get this in the bag. But it's just unfortunate they've come up against Carlton. They dropped a few earlier in the season. They probably should have won, and now they're here. So Carlton should handily win this, I would say, based on form.
Yeah.
Next match.
We have Gold Coast versus Hawthorn at the People First Stadium.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Oh, Liam.
I don't know what to do.
I tried to get one up for the viewers and listeners last week with Richmond about $3.70. I thought that price is a bit wrong, a bit silly to beat St Kilda. Happy to take the price. This is another one of those situations. At the time of recording, Hawthorn are $3.78 to beat the Gold Coast for $1.27. I think that's too big of a disparity. And Hawthorn have shown me they can play 4 quarters of football. Gold Coast have yet to tick that off. Gold Coast may be the better side, but these specifically are the type of games they can get themselves into trouble in and drop when on paper they should be winning. Mm-hmm. So with that, as a bit of one from left field, because it wasn't going to be North Melbourne to beat Geelong, going with Hawthorn here to beat the Gold Coast Suns in the Saturday night game that I will not be watching because I'll be watching the other one.
Fair enough. Wait, they've got 2 on at the same time when there's only 8 games on. That's poor.
Simulcast.
That's poor. It's poor. Terrible. Oh, look, I was actually going to, I think you called it your hipster tip a few weeks ago. I was going to do the hipster tip too. I was going to go for Hawthorn as well because my vibes have rubbed off onto Hawthorn now. They've left Adelaide, they've left Gold Coast, and they're firmly on Hawks.
Done a mid-season trade.
The mid-season trade. I'm trading in for Hawks. I think that. Do you know what? Yeah, Hawks. I think if they can follow on with what they did last week, yes, vibes are off Gold Coast.
Okay. I like it. It's bold from both of us, and I like it. Yeah. Let's talk about what, apart from Melbourne Brisbane, genuinely could be the game of the round, and that's Port Adelaide versus Fremantle because these two teams.
Who thought we'd be saying that at the start of the season? Unbelievable.
I know it's very exciting. Port Adelaide win, but I think it should be a very good game. I'm hoping to see a lot from Fremantle, but Port Adelaide and Adelaide is one of the hardest fixtures in the AFL.
It is.
They look like they're starting to rock and roll. I wouldn't say I'd be shocked if Fremantle won, but much like I would have been with Brisbane, actually I was shocked that we beat Brisbane, but much like the Adelaide game, I would be surprised if Fremantle won this game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a huge test for them to bounce back from the Carlton loss. I think if they can come up and show up like they did against Carlton, then they're going to give themselves every chance. But it's Port Adelaide who are playing very well in Adelaide, which is where they live. And so I think that's going to be just a hill just too high for Freo. So Port Adelaide for me as well. But like you, we'll take Freo win. We'll take it. We do have to talk about these next two. We'll quickly rattle them off because I don't think it's going to be too hard to tip.
I mean, I won't be moving off my couch for 6 hours on Sunday. I don't know about you. We have to start with at Gumba. We have Geelong versus North Melbourne.
Yeah,
it would be a pretty big surprise if Geelong did not go 5-0 here. I think they should get the job done. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, though, there's a bit about this West Coast Richmond game that intrigues me because Richmond
before we move on to that, because I've got to do the little graphics for this, and I can't do it unless I tell you my tip. Geelong. Okay. Now you go. Proceed.
You're just so silly. Nah. Thank you. West Coast versus Richmond at Optus Stadium, bathed in sunshine at 2:00 on a Sunday afternoon. Kelly Underwood on the mic. This should be a pretty interesting game. It will be, won't it? I mean, it's either that or Gold Coast Hawthorn on the Saturday night. There's a TikTok account, and I apologise I didn't have the name on hand, but there's a TikTok account that tries to predict which game Kelly Underwood will commentate each week. He's got it right the last 2 weeks. It's an excellent premise. I personally think it's fantastic. It's very funny. West Coast may be able to sting them here. I'm going to side with Richmond narrowly.
Okay.
But this would be one of the kind of 3, 4, 5 games that West Coast have circled on the calendar saying, oh, hello, we might be able to jag this.
Jesse.
Liam.
Jesse, I'm going to do it.
You going to do it?
I'm going to tip the Eagles, yeah.
I love it. You know what? Good on you. You are braver than me, and I'm absolutely here for it. Good on you.
Yeah.
Like, I genuinely, respect that for going out and saying that live. Good on. Well,
if they can roll on from what they've dished up, that sounds bad. What they served, that sounds bad too. If how they played against Sydney on the weekend, they can roll on with that, then they can definitely catch out a Richmond. The question is, can they? Will they? Do they? And also, I want them to get their good game, like really good game, out of the system before the Derby the following week. And that's it. That's the tips done. That is round 5 coming up. That is the gather round wrapped up. Jesse, I'm not going to lie to you, because we've done this quite quickly tonight. We've decided to do a last minute record. I have not prepared a dodgy punt for next week. Have you, or shall we put out something on Insta later on?
We'll do a proper on Insta later, but straight out, Hawthorn to beat Gold Coast $3.78. Good enough value for me.
What's the Eagles paying?
Odds are not up at this time of recording, although if I refresh my screen and we do a little Jesse fact check.
Jesse fact check live.
And that's okay. I'm going to price it as $1.20 Richmond, $4 West Coast. That'd be roughly what I'd be pricing. In terms of, you can't really take $1.20 about a team, but I'd also probably want more than fours to be backing West Coast to win, if that makes sense. Yep. It's one of those things where, the percentages and the limits in sports make it quite hard when you're looking at head-to-head. That's why when you see an opportunity like Hawthorn at $3.78 responsibly, you take it. Responsibly.
Wicked. Done. Sorry if that was a bit more disjointed than the regular episodes we do. We kind of threw this together on a Sunday because we have.
Did we? I thought it was just standard nonsense from me.
I was talking more about myself, to be honest with you, not you, Jesse. You're always succinct and precise as always. Always as rambling. It's a rambling man, but rambling in a good way. You know what you're talking about. I do not. So when I come in without any preparation, I'm just like, Bulldogs played.
Liam, you did fine. You've been pleasure to do the first episodes with. No, this is not your firing speech. It's a genuine appreciation for your first few episodes on the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast, which I hope all of our listeners have subscribed to on their preferred podcasting platform and YouTube. If they like it, and you can listen to something and not like it, hopefully you leave a nice review or a like, or tell your friends, family, work colleagues, the neighborhood dog that barks too much. Tell them all. Give us something actually worth barking about. Until next week, have a lovely time during watching the footy at appropriate hours if you're a West Australian, and we'll see you again on the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast.
Bye.